Good morning, friend. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today is batch bulk freezer cooking day. We have 10 or 11-ish recipes we're going to be making today. And the first thing I did this morning is I peeled my potatoes so that we could get the potatoes on the stove to cook. And I'm going to season this really well with salt. I'm going to put the lid on. We're starting with cold potatoes, cold water, turning the stove on high. So I'm going to start by making 2 recipes at a time. We've got a caramelized onion or French onion shepherd's pie, so kind of a twist on a traditional shepherd's pie. And then over here, we're going to do a baked ziti. I think all the recipes I'm doing today are brand new to me, so I'm excited about this. So while we're going to chop some vegetables, I have some vegetables prepped over there ready to be prepped. I'm going to get some pasta on to boil. One of my friends is in need of some freezer meals and I am completely out. I have 1 marinated meat in my freezer and that's it, because we had that ice storm, we lost water for 8 days and I relied pretty heavily on my freezer meals. So we are completely out of breakfast ones. Oh, that's not true. I do have some pasties still downstairs in the freezer, but I don't have any meals. I only have 1 marinated meat and my friend is in need of some meals. So I thought this would be perfect time to not only fill my freezer, but to get some meals in my friend's freezer as well. So for the French onion shepherd's pie, or I guess we are technically making cottage pie because the recipe calls for lamb and I have beef, so I'm just going to use beef instead of lamb. And I'm pretty sure if you make a shepherd's pie with beef, then it's called cottage pie. So we need to caramelize up a lot of onions. So I want to get this going pretty quickly toward the beginning of this day because this is going to take a good half an hour or so. And so while these are caramelizing, we can prep and do other things while this is cooking. I'm also, while I'm here, I'm going to chop up some onions for the baked ziti that we're going to be making today. I do have some caramelized onions in my freezer, but those are preserved up and sitting there for a day where I'm not wanting to spend a ton of time in the kitchen. That's a convenience item for me. And I've got all these onions from last year that need to be used up. These are onions I purchased from a local farm. And I want to make sure I use them before they go bad. So this is the perfect time to get a bunch of these used up. While I was peeling potatoes this morning, I went ahead and I peeled my carrots. These are the last fresh carrots I have from last year's garden. So we did a good job using those up. We also need some onions for some of the marinated meats we're going to be making. So I went ahead and I grabbed enough onions from downstairs pantry, hopefully for all the recipes we're going to need them for today. These are all the onions we need for the caramelized onions, so I'm just going to start chopping them as thinly as I can. I did sharpen my knife before we got started. You know what? I think I should check on my noodles. They are not quite done yet. I didn't set a timer. Hey Siri, set a timer for 4 minutes. I've got
4 minutes starting now.
I have a couple goals for today. First, I want to make sure I get all these meals done. And so we're making dinners and breakfast. 2, I want to see if I can do this by keeping my kitchen relatively clean so that when I'm done with this big batch cooking day, I don't have a disaster to clean up. So I went ahead and I unloaded my dishwasher and I've emptied my garbage can so that I can load dishes and I can throw things away as needed so my sink doesn't pile up. And one reason I want to get all of this done today is not only I need to bring some meals to my friend, but I just started hundreds of seeds yesterday, and my focus is going to be the garden here coming up. And so I want to give myself some convenient meals. So on days where I am focused on things outside the kitchen, I don't have to worry about cooking. I think this is about as many onions as I'm gonna get into my pan. So I think we're gonna call this good, even though the recipe called for a few more. We will use these onions in some other recipes. I can see that one needs to be sliced up just a little bit. So let's see if we can get this into our pan without making a mess. That was our timer for the pasta. So yep, that's done. Before I start the onions, I want to get that off the stove. And I have one of these pot strainers. I'm gonna go strain this and run this under cold water because we're not ready to use these and I don't want these to overcook. If I was making this and baking this right away, I wouldn't rinse these pasta noodles under cold water, but because they're gonna go in the freezer, I don't want them to get overcooked by sitting in here in this warm pot. And in my sink, I have some sausage in some cold water because I forgot to grab that out this morning and have that thawed for the pasta sauce. I'm gonna rinse this under cold water one more time. And whenever I make a baked pasta for freezer meal prep, I always cook them about 2 or 3 minutes less than I would normally because I want them definitely on the al dente side because they're gonna cook again in the oven. So we'll just set this over here until we need it. We're gonna I need to turn the stove off back there. Turn the wrong one off. So we need to get some oil in the bottom of our pan that we're going to caramelize our onions in. That looks like it was the perfect amount, so I'm gonna get some salt in here, and I'm gonna start this on high, and then once the moisture starts to release from the onions and they actually start to brown and caramelize, I'll turn that way, way down. But for now, we're gonna give it a jump start, and we're gonna prep some vegetables for some of the other dishes we need. For the baked ziti, we need 2 onions diced, and I've already got onions peeled here. So that's for the baked ziti. And then we're gonna make some fajitas. So I need some sliced onions. And for the shepherd's pie, I need to dice up these carrots. I need some more room on this cutting board so I can prep a few more vegetables. And I'm gonna try to do this without using a bazillion dishes. We'll see if we can do it together. So what I'm gonna do is get some of these onions in one of my freezer bags for one of the meals so that I can just start putting them where they go instead of putting them in another bowl. So we are gonna be making 4 crock pot / marinated meats, or things that could go either in a crock pot, in an Instant Pot, or on the grill. And these are one of my favorite things to make. These are a dinner or a dish that requires a little bit more effort. So if I'm gonna pull this out, I usually need to then make sides to go along with it, whether that's a vegetable, a starch, a pasta, whatever it might be, versus something like the baked ziti and, well, I guess the shepherd's pie, I'd probably make a vegetable too. So these are convenience items as well, but not quite as convenient, I guess, as a shepherd's pie, but they are one of my favorite things to have in my freezer. So what I'm gonna do is, while I'm already marking one of the bags for these onions where they are designed or destined to go, I'm gonna go ahead and mark my bag for the rest of the things. On the top of my list here, I have maple chipotle beef sliders. This would be perfect for a crock pot or Instant Pot. I would not put this on the grill because we're gonna be using a chuck roast. And I'm gonna go ahead and mark on the bag the directions so that when I gift this to my friends, the directions are already on here. From frozen, it's gonna take 8 to 10 hours in a crock pot on high. From thawed, probably 6 to 8 hours on high. Okay, so I have my first 2 bags done. The next recipe is going to be something that you could put in a crock pot or on the grill, and this is mango jalapeno chicken. Same thing, I'm gonna write crock pot directions or grill directions. The next recipe is honey harissa chicken. This could go in a crock pot or on the grill, or it could be cooked on the stove. I guess all of these, except for the chipotle sliders, could be cooked on the stove as well. And the final recipe that's gonna go in one of these freezer bags is fajita chicken. This makes a fantastic crock pot meal, a great Instant Pot meal, or I really like to cook this in the oven and on the stovetop. So this one has a little bit more versatility. So this one is where the onions are going to their final destination. So I'm gonna grab out some of my bag holders here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just get my onions directly into these bags. I love these bag holders when doing one of these big days like this. I've got my 2 bags here. I'm gonna divide these onions between these 2 bags. If I can get them into the bags. I just added a little extra oil, and I just turned this down to very low because you can see they're starting to get some browning on these onions. I don't want these to brown, I want them to caramelize. So now that I've got this on really low, I am gonna keep a close eye on it, but this is gonna take a good 30-35 minutes to cook and caramelize. Our potatoes are still boiling away, they're not quite done yet. So let's go ahead and just finish up our fajita chicken. This is a recipe I have made before. This is the only recipe I've made before out of all these recipes. And it's been a long time since I've made it, and I love it. It's so convenient to have in the freezer. So that's why I decided I was gonna add this recipe to the repertoire. So I've got 3 peppers here that I just washed up. I've got 2 green ones and 1 red one. You could use whatever kind of peppers you like. If you like orange and yellow, I went ahead and I bought the green ones because I like the flavor of the green ones. They kind of have a little bit more of a, not a bite, but they're not as sweet, but I do like the sweetness that a red one adds plus the color. So I went ahead and I'm gonna add 1 green pepper to 1 bag and 1 green pepper to the other bag, and then I will split the red pepper between the 2 bags. This is just nice on one of those nights where you want fajitas, but you don't want to go through all the effort of slicing all the peppers and onions. I know that's not always difficult, but you know, there's some nights where you just need to get something on the stove and not worry about the chopping and prepping portion of it. When I do one of these big cooking days, I normally don't get to these type of recipes till toward the end. So this is kind of nice that we're getting an easy thing checked off the list right at the beginning. It's kind of a confidence booster. All right, so there is that. I don't think we have any other real vegetables we have to prep today. I'm gonna leave this just like this. I'm actually gonna pop these in the refrigerator, and we'll come back to them when we, process all the meat and everything that's gonna go in the rest of them. I don't wanna get that out quite yet. So for now, I'm just gonna pop these in the fridge. What we're gonna move on next is getting the baked ziti sauce and meat all cooked. So I'm gonna grab another pan out. We're gonna have the shepherd's pie for dinner tonight, and I'm actually going to serve the shepherd's pie in this dish. If I wasn't gonna do that, I would probably wait to make the baked ziti sauce in that pan so I don't dirty up another pan. I need some hot pads. I'm gonna move these potatoes to this back burner because those are just cooking away for me. I'm gonna get this pan on here, and we're gonna get our sausage and onions cooking in this. The recipe that I found for this calls for ground beef, and I have a lot of Italian sausage in my freezer. And so I thought, instead of ground beef in this one, we would do sausage just to add a little extra flavor. So that's what I'm substituting here for ground beef. So I've got 2 pounds here, maybe still a little frozen on the inside, but that's okay. We're gonna let that cook. Potatoes have quite a bit longer to go. I have now taken the potatoes off the stove. I drained them. I let them steam a little bit to get any excess water out of the potatoes. And then I added some butter and milk, and those are sitting, my butter was frozen, so I'm just letting the butter sit in those hot potatoes to melt, and then we're gonna mash those up. So now what I'm gonna do is kind of switch my focus just a little bit, since I'm still waiting on the onions to cook and my caramelized onions to caramelize. I'm gonna go ahead and preheat the oven to, you know what, I think I'm not gonna preheat the oven quite yet because I need to have my oat soak. So we're gonna switch gears while these are cooking on the stove, and we're gonna go ahead and get some of the breakfast items going. We have 2 breakfast items we're gonna be making. And the first one I need to get started on is the oatmeal blueberry muffins, because these need to sit, the oats need to sit in the milk. Need to shake this up for 20 minutes. So while the oats are soaking, we'll get going on our waffles so we can cook the waffles while we do other things. We're just gonna let these oats now sit here, hydrate, then we can make the muffins. I'm gonna get going on the waffle batter here. And this way our waffles, because it's gonna take a while to cook all of them because we're gonna make mini waffles, I can be making the waffles while we do other things in the kitchen. So we're gonna start with our milk. Now I'm gonna add 3 cups of whole wheat flour. One cup of homegrown homemade applesauce. A 1/2 cup of melted butter. Baking powder. I should have mixed the baking powder in with the flour first before I added the butter and applesauce, but I forgot, so that's okay. I'll just mix it in the side here. Just like that, perfect. So now I'm gonna add my cinnamon, and I'm gonna mix my cinnamon in with my flour just a little bit. And I just grabbed my mixer because we're gonna put our egg whites into the mixing bowl, and we actually need to fluff the egg whites. And we're gonna fold those into this batter. So I'm gonna get my yolks into my bowl. We need 6 eggs.
Whole wheat waffles sometimes can tend to be pretty dense, but by separating the egg whites and the egg yolks and whipping the egg whites, and we're gonna fold those egg whites into our batter mixture, It creates the most light and fluffy waffle, even though we're using 100% whole wheat flour. These turned out fantastic, and they will definitely be a waffle recipe I will make again. We loved the apple, cinnamon, and the fluffiness of the egg whites in this waffle.
I'm gonna take this and bring it over here. We're gonna whisk this together while we mix up our wet ingredients with our dry ingredients.
Whenever I'm doing big cooking days like this, I'm always trying to think, what can I have working for me while I'm doing something else? So we have the caramelized onions and the potatoes and the pasta going first, because those are on the stove and going to be there for a little bit. And then we can focus and kind of switch gears, prep some more vegetables. Now we're going to get the waffles going, because this is going to take some time to have these go in and out of the waffle maker. So while the waffles are cooking, I'll get the muffin batter done in the oven, and those can be baking while we then move on to another thing as well. So lots of things going on at one time.
I used to think whipping eggs was very complicated and difficult. It's really the easiest thing to do. The KitchenAid does it in minutes. And now we're gonna fold our egg whites into our batter mixture. And this doesn't have any sweetener in the recipe. There's no sugar or anything. I think I'm gonna add just a couple tablespoons of our vanilla sugar just to help with browning. That's one thing sugar does really well. That's probably about 3 tablespoons. Is it helps things to brown because the sugars caramelize. And then I added some vanilla. That wasn't in the recipe either, but I have a hard time not adding vanilla to things. So now that I have my sugar mixed in, I'm gonna go ahead and fold in our egg whites. Look how beautiful these are. I'm gonna do about 1/3 at a time. And this is gonna just really lighten up this batter. Yeah, I'm just gonna put all this in there. So here we have our beautiful, light and fluffy waffle batter. I'm pretty sure I have this very well combined. So now I've preheated my little mini waffle maker. We're gonna make a lot of waffles. This recipe is gonna make a lot. We're probably gonna get, oh, I don't know, a few dozen. Oh. So we're gonna start with that, see how well that fills our waffle maker. And now that we have that done, we can turn our attention back to our muffins. I'm just gonna set this batter right here so that we can keep making waffles while we're doing other things in the kitchen, like finish up these muffins. Oh my goodness, look how beautiful these are. They're not quite cooked. I need those to cook a little longer. In the time it took me to get out some of the ingredients for the muffins, our waffles are done, and look how beautiful and light and fluffy those are, especially for being whole wheat. So I need those to cool a little bit, and then we can give them a taste test. But I wanna keep cooking these in the meantime. I'm using this cookie scoop because it just makes it easier to properly proportion out the correct amount of batter. So we're gonna close that and get going on this. So here to our oats and milk, I'm gonna add 1 cup of honey, and I wanna get all that good honey out of here. So I'm gonna take a spatula to it. And now here I have 1 cup of melted butter. I'm gonna add 2 large eggs. I'm gonna mix this together before I add the dry ingredients. This muffin mixture comes together really easily. Not that the waffles didn't come together easily, but this is just extraordinarily easy. So this is why I wanted to get these waffles made now, so that I can be doing this while I'm doing other things, meaning I can be cooking them and rotating them while I'm doing other things. I want to taste this waffle mixture because this one is cooled now. I have never made a waffle where I fluff the egg whites, and they are so airy. They're not crunchy at all. You wouldn't know that these are whole wheat because they're so light and fluffy. I'm happy I added the few tablespoons of sugar. We're gonna get so many waffles distributed throughout, it's not gonna be much. I probably didn't need to do that, but these are good. These are really, really good. I ran out of my flour in my container in my drawer, so I grabbed my big bucket out. I'm gonna add my flour into my muffin mixture. And this time I'm gonna make sure I mix my dry ingredients into the flour a little bit better. That was cinnamon. This is baking powder. Got baking soda here. I think my waffles need to be, those need to cook for just a minute longer. We have baking soda, so I'm gonna mix that together along with my salt. And that is our muffin mixture.
I don't think I mentioned that the type of muffins we're making are a blueberry oatmeal muffin, so it's kind of like a mix between a baked oatmeal and a blueberry muffin, and they were delicious. I really liked the fact that they used the honey as the sweetener. It added something a little extra special to these muffins, and we will definitely make these again. They were fantastic.
Now I'm gonna add my blueberries that I've already washed and picked out any sort of stems or anything in there. And I'm gonna use my spatula to fold these in so I don't crush the blueberries. This smells so yummy. I love anything with oatmeal in it, and I've never made a blueberry oatmeal muffin before. And you know, this recipe did not call for vanilla either, and I can't help myself. I'm gonna put a good splash of vanilla in there. Probably should have done that before I added the blueberries, but I didn't quite think about it. This is the first time I've ever made blueberry muffins without using frozen blueberries, and it's not leaving a bunch of blue streaks with the fresh blueberries, which is kind of nice. I normally buy frozen blueberries out of blueberry season, but when I went to the store yesterday to pick up a few items I needed for today, that's not quite done yet. I'm gonna put a couple things away. They were gonna sit in my car longer than I was comfortable because I had a couple other errands I needed to run, and they would have completely melted, so I went with fresh, and that's really nice. I like that. All right, I'm gonna get a couple things put away. We can get these not packaged up. We can get these scooped up into our muffin tin, and then we can get these baked off. But I wanna clear some space in my kitchen. I've got a big bucket of flour down here. That's why I'm maneuvering around it. I think before I put this bucket away, I'm gonna go ahead and just fill my flour container up with flour. And then I'll put my big bucket away. I already have to clean these counters. I might as well do this well. My counters are already messy. Perfect. I'm gonna go put this away, and then we're gonna get these muffins in the oven. I do have a lid for this. I'm not gonna put it on quite yet because we're gonna use this flour a few more times today. I am doubling both the muffin and the waffle mixture because one recipe is gonna be for my family and then one recipe worth is gonna be for my friends. So let's go ahead and just keep on rotating these waffles through. I am gonna use muffin tin liners for my blueberry muffins just for easier cleanup. I'm gonna have enough cleanup to do when today's over. I don't wanna worry about cleaning a muffin tin. I didn't make muffins for a long time because scrubbing a muffin tin liner was one of my least favorite things to do. And then I made cupcakes for something, I don't remember what. And of course I used cupcake liners. And I thought, why have I not been using muffin tin liners this whole time? So now I like to make muffins and I like to line the tin because it just makes life a little easier. So that's what I'm doing here, getting these lined up. 2 recipes worth should make 24 muffins. I'm gonna lightly spray these liners, and I'm gonna use a cookie scoop, or an ice cream scoop, I should say, to scoop out the batter. So hopefully I can get it kind of even throughout. This batter is very thick. I don't think I've ever made a muffin batter this thick before. I am gonna take a second to wipe the rims of each one of my muffin tins so that it doesn't bake on there, and it just makes cleanup again a lot easier. It's always easier to clean up not baked on batter than baked on batter. Okay, into the oven they go. I realized I never pushed start on my oven for the other one to preheat, and so I went ahead and just preheated this one because it preheats a little faster. These are going to bake for, wow, only 11 to 13 minutes. So I need to set a timer. I'm gonna kind of reset my kitchen because it is a little bit messy. We are back at the stove and our caramelized onions are done. They look absolutely beautiful. And we need to get these caramelized onions out of this pan so that we can cook our ground beef and our carrots in here. This is done as well. I had turned this off because it was getting a little dark. I think what I'm gonna do real quick is actually add my garlic to this. I need to get garlic out for the shepherd's pie as well. This is some home chopped up garlic that I put in these little pucks and then I freeze. So we're gonna get that in there, let that saute for a minute. And I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and just take my caramelized onions and I'm gonna put them in this bowl. This pan is a little bit hot, but that's okay. I'm gonna get this back on the stove. The ground beef that I am gonna cook is very, very lean, so a little extra oil is gonna be good. This is a little frozen still, which is fine. We'll just go ahead and brown this up and thaw it all at the same time. And before we do anything else, our blueberry muffins are done. And my goodness, do these look absolutely incredible. I love a large muffin tin like this because you can cook, you know what? I think those actually, let me get a tester. I've got a tester right here. Let's see if these are done. Oh yeah, those are done. I think I'm gonna give them a minute longer. They're pretty dense, so they're gonna take a minute to cook. I'm gonna get the lid on this ground beef so it cooks a little bit faster since it has to thaw. I'm gonna cook this garlic in here. I just need the garlic to kind of melt a little bit. Ooh, this smells so delicious. I need to get my marinara sauce in with my meat. So I've got 2 quarts of homemade homegrown marinara sauce. I'm gonna get this in here.
Once the sausage was cooked, I did add my 2 onions to the sausage mixture and I sauteed those onions until they were soft. Then I added the garlic. Now I'm adding the marinara sauce. This baked ziti is going to come together really quickly. Basically, the hardest part of the baked ziti was just cooking the sausage and the onions together. So not hard at all. That marinara sauce is already flavored how I want it to be flavored. It's got basil and onions and wine, and it's absolutely delicious with homegrown tomatoes. And so it doesn't need any more other than just kind of heating all of it through. And we're just going to continue on with our waffles.
If you wanted those waffles to go a lot quicker, use a full-size waffle maker. I like the little ones because they're more personal size, but they are taking a long time, especially because I doubled that recipe. So we're almost done. Well, we're probably about 3/4 the way done with that. I did take some time to clean the kitchen. I got the dishwasher started. Our ground beef is now thawed, and so we can add some of the rest of the ingredients to our ground beef. We need to cook the carrots first. I grabbed some of the ingredients we need, but before we can add those, I need the carrots to cook. Hopefully I can get everything to fit in this pan. I can go ahead and season this now because I have not added any salt to this. So I'm going to season this with salt. Now remember, this has 4 pounds of meat in it. So I put 3 very healthy pinches of salt in there. Our red sauce is done, so we can actually go ahead and make our baked ziti once we have room on the counter. Now I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of pepper. Remember, again, we have a lot of meat and carrots in here. I'm going to get this stirred together, and we're going to cook this until the carrots are tender. I thought that was a lot of carrots, but now that I'm mixing it in with the ground beef, it doesn't seem like it's probably the perfect amount. I probably could have done a few more. Okay, so we're gonna let that cook for a little bit. I am still making waffles, but I needed this counter space so we could finish up our baked ziti, because we basically can assemble this and then we can check something off the list for officially being done. So here we've got our red sauce. I have 2 dishes. One for my friend that is a foil pan because I don't want her to have to worry about dishes. I don't want her to worry about having to return it back to me. And then one that's in a glass dish that's for me because I don't mind washing this. So we've got our red sauce here. The first thing we need to do is take some of our red sauce and just put it on the bottom of our baking dish just to help prevent the pasta from sticking. I do have one more thing I need to prep, and that's some fresh basil. And I'll do that in just a minute. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't taste this sauce for salt and pepper. Oh, that's delicious. That doesn't need anything. My friend has 2 young kids, so I don't want to add any spice. If it was just me, I probably would have added some red pepper flakes to that, but that's perfect just the way it is, nice and garlicky. The marinara sauce that I used for this was very flavorful. That's why it doesn't need a lot of seasoning. So now what we're gonna do, I think I'm actually gonna set this over here for just a minute, and I need to, I'm gonna move this because I don't wanna get sauce on that. I need to pour my sauce in with my noodles. Set that there. I'm gonna get every last bit of this sauce because it is delicious stuff. The best marinara sauce I have ever made. I'm gonna make it exactly the same way this coming growing season. This is probably one of the easiest recipes we're making today. We're gonna add ricotta cheese, and I'm gonna stir all of this together until well combined. I think I was supposed to stir the noodles in with the sauce and then add the ricotta cheese, but this will work. It's kind of like a lazy lasagna almost. I'm using rigatoni noodles. I didn't say that earlier because I prefer rigatoni noodles. I like the ridges in them. True ziti pasta is just a smooth long tube and doesn't have the ridges. And I find that the ridges hold better to the sauce. So it might not be traditional, but it's what Josh and I prefer. So that's what I used. I can see that my waffle is done. I need to put a new set of dough or batter in my waffle maker. This is my new waffle station over here. We're almost done with these waffles. I don't actually want to put all the pasta in here because what we need to do is actually add a cheese layer. So this is Parmesan cheese. And then I have some mozzarella cheese here. I'm going to put some of that on. And now I have some fresh basil. I didn't want to chop this until right before use, just to make sure it doesn't turn brown on me. And now I'm gonna cover it with cheese. I'm not gonna add any more basil to the top because I don't want that to turn brown. So I'm just adding it to the middle. The sauce and the cheese and the noodles will protect it, and it's gonna cook up beautifully. We officially have 2 recipes completely done, and we are almost done with a 3rd, and we have other ones on the way. So here I've got my meat and carrot mixture. I had to separate it into 2 bowls because we now need to make the sauce portion, and I didn't have enough space in this one pan. I'm gonna serve dinner in this one pan, so I went ahead and rinsed out my pasta sauce pan, and we're gonna go ahead and use that one to finish off this sauce. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing to both of these pans to finish this. We're gonna add just a couple tablespoons of flour in here. We're gonna cook that along with a couple tablespoons of tomato paste in each one. I'm just gonna finish this jar between the 2. Try to make these exactly the same. Now I'm gonna add some good douses of Worcestershire sauce, probably about a 1/4 cup. A good blob of garlic in each one. Parsley. I'm gonna stir this together and cook this until the garlic is cooked, the flour is cooked, and the tomato paste is cooked. Now we're gonna add some chicken broth to make our sauce. I'm gonna add 2 cups to each pan. We're just gonna simmer that until it thickens, and then we're gonna give it a taste test and see if we need to adjust any of the seasonings. I'm gonna scrape up any of the fond that's on the bottom of the pan. And now the secret ingredient, we're gonna add half of our onion mixture to each one of these. We're gonna add, 1/4 of our onion mixture to each one of these. So I'm gonna stir this in. I need the onion mixture in here so that I can give this a taste test. The onions are gonna add a lot of sweetness, so I wanna make sure that's incorporated well before we taste it to adjust any of the seasonings. All right, give this meat a taste. I did get to take out the final waffles. We finally have all of those waffles cooked up. So let's give this a try. It's really good. It's super, super savory. I think it needs some sort of acidity or something to counterbalance that. I think we need to adjust the seasonings just a little bit. This wasn't in the recipe, but I think I'm gonna add maybe about a teaspoon of mustard to each one of these, because that's gonna add some brightness to it. A little bit more salt. And I think what I'm gonna do to add some more acidity is maybe about a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. Let's stir that in and try that. That's all it needed. My recipe that I normally make for shepherd's pie, I add about a 1/4 cup of red wine, and that kind of gives you that acidity. But using the balsamic vinegar worked just perfect. If you wanted to add peas, this would be the perfect time to do so. I normally add peas to my cottage pie, but the recipe, this one did not call for that, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip it. I don't even have peas in my house right now. If I did, I might add them, but it's gonna be just delicious without it. So here I've got my dish for my friend. We're gonna have dinner tonight, and this is what we're gonna have. So this is what I'm just gonna serve it in. Here we have our mashed potatoes that we started, but I have not finished them. So we need to keep mashing them and probably adjusting the seasonings and things in here because I haven't tasted them since I added the butter or the milk. And I haven't added any salt to this either. The recipe, this is the only ingredients it says to add to this, but I'm gonna taste it and see if it needs any pepper or anything. Don't be afraid to taste your food and adjust the seasonings as needed. One, you might have a little bit different preference than a recipe, or two, it just might be missing some acidity or some sweetness or a salty flavor. Oh, this isn't hot. Those are good, but they're not there yet. So let's see. I'm gonna add some salt and pepper. I like to make sure every aspect of my dish is nicely seasoned and delicious on its own. So there's pepper and salt. Let's see, does it need any more liquid? I think I'm gonna add a splash of half and half. The only thing I added in this was milk earlier. Add a splash of that. I'm gonna grab a new spoon. We're gonna taste it. Perfect. Perfect. So now we have our mashed potatoes on our pie mixture. We're gonna take the rest of our caramelized onions and we're gonna put these on the top. And then we have one more amazing ingredient we're gonna add. So it's gonna get even better. Again, this is where I'm gonna play with this recipe. The recipe states to add cheddar cheese to the top of this. Now, I think that would be delicious, but we're making a French onion shepherd's pie. So I substituted Gruyere cheese because Gruyere is a little more traditional when it comes to French onion soup. So now we get to take our shredded Gruyere cheese, and this is gonna make a crusty topping for our cheesy, beefy cottage pie. I'm using cottage pie and shepherd's pie interchangeably. So I had two, I think they were about 4-ounce blocks. I probably, well, we'll see. I don't know if I'm gonna use all of it. My friend who I'm bringing this one to, I know she loves cheese. Maybe I will use all of it. The ones in the foil pan, you can see the foil pan is soft. So once this cools down a little bit more toward room temperature, now that I just put my hand on the bottom, I can tell it's very, very warm. I do not want to put that in my freezer. But the pasta one was cool enough. I went ahead and put that in the freezer before I covered it. I just need it to freeze solid so that I can wrap it in foil and write the directions on it and everything. And I need them to be frozen completely before I can stack them because you can see how it's bowing at the bottom. They're not rigid like, you know, a cast iron or one of my glass baking dishes. Okay, wow, okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 recipes just completely done. Now we have another recipe that started and a few recipes that are really easy. They're basically dump and go recipes. So let me put away the things that I got out for this and then we'll move on to those recipes. Now we're gonna make some cranberry meatballs, but before we do that, I had to run downstairs to grab some things and I saw my jar of cranberry juice that I made probably about 6 weeks ago or so, and I haven't tasted it yet, and I'm thirsty, so I thought, let's grab this and give it a try. This is just cranberries, water, and sugar that I put in a jar and jarred it up and canned it. Oh, wow. That is delicious. That is pretty sweet. I think I'd have to go back and look and see what I did. I think I put a half a cup of sugar or maybe 1/3 of a cup of sugar in that. I only did 2 jars because I wanted to taste it first before I did a bunch of it. I will definitely do that again, but I will probably just do a 1/4 cup of sugar. I have some carbonated water here. I'm just gonna use this kind of as a flavoring. A little bit more. Cheers. Now that is delicious. Speaking of cranberries, we are going to be making a cranberry jalapeno meatball. So I need to grab a bowl out. Now I was planning to make a double batch of this, but you know, I did not thaw enough meat. So I'm just gonna make a single batch and that's gonna be just fine. I'm gonna start with 2 pounds of ground beef. That cranberry carbonated water beverage is perfect for a little pick-me-up halfway through this cooking day. So I'm gonna get this in here. I'm gonna go get my hands washed really well, and we're gonna finish making our meatballs. I do have the oven preheated to 425 degrees. This is the second time today I thought I preheated the oven, and I didn't. So I'm gonna get that preheated. I got inspired by a meatball that I saw at Costco, and it was a cranberry jalapeno meatball. And I thought I could make that at home. So that's what we're doing. So we have ground beef, garlic, black pepper, ginger, salt, breadcrumbs, soy sauce, and an egg. I'm gonna mix all this together. I almost forgot the part that makes this cranberry jalapeno is the jalapeno. So I need to get this diced up, and I'm gonna dice this up very, very small. Get this in the meat mixture and then mix it all up. And I'm gonna take the seeds out just so that it's not quite so spicy. But you could absolutely leave them in if you want to. Okay, now we can get this mixed up. Now I think this recipe, I just grabbed a container. I'm not gonna freeze this one. This is gonna be meal prep for later this week. So I am going to cook the meatballs, make the sweet and sour sauce, and then let it cool, put it in the fridge, and this will be meal prep. Now if I can get enough for 2, then I'll make one for my friend and I'll meal prep it and put it in the freezer. Just depends on how many meatballs I can get out of this. Now, the way I was inspired by this recipe is I saw the cranberry, I think it was cranberry jalapeno chicken meatballs at Costco, and I thought that sounded delicious. Well, I don't have ground chicken in my house, but I have a lot of ground beef, so I thought I would just use beef instead. And then that didn't come with a sauce because it was just some pre-cooked meatballs from Costco that you could reheat. And I thought, I've got cranberry sauce in my house. We could make a sweet and sour sauce to go over the top of this, because the way I envision serving this would be with rice and steamed broccoli or green beans or something like that. And I thought, we need a sauce to go over the top so that we can put that over rice. So awesome, it looks like I'm gonna get enough to make 2 of these. So there's one. So we're going to kind of combine 2 recipes. I found one recipe for the meatballs, but then I found another recipe for the sweet and sour sauce. So we're going to make up our own recipe here. And I didn't even follow all the directions for the meatballs. I kind of made this up. That's how I cook a lot. I find recipes and I use them as kind of outlines for making up my own thing. So once I get all of these like pre-portioned using my cookie scoop, I'm gonna go back in with my hands and I will round them out. My oven is now preheating, but this just sounds really good. So I think I'm going to enjoy this week. So that's the nice thing about when I do these big cooking days is I always get a bunch of things prepped and then I don't have to cook for a while. That's my oven, it's nice and preheated now. Now we can go ahead and get the sauce made on the stove to pour over the top of these. I'm gonna start with some flour Now I'm gonna put brown sugar in here, vinegar, because this is a sweet and sour. This is white distilled. I have a can of pineapple juice. We're actually gonna use this in another recipe later. A jar of homemade cranberry juice. I'm gonna put the whole jar in there. And soy sauce. I'm gonna use my whisk to whisk this together. I need to turn the stove on. And I'm just gonna cook this until it's kind of all come together and that flour has dissolved and thickened this just a little bit. And while this is cooking, we can move on to our next recipe. Now that we have our meatballs in the oven and our sauce on the stove, we are gonna get going on our crock pot meals or stovetop meals or grill meals, whatever you wanna call them. This first one for sure is a crock pot meal for me. This is maple sliders. And the last time we did a bulk cooking day, I did 2 chuck roasts ready to go in the crock pot. One of them was Korean beef chuck roast, and the other one was a Chipotle honey chuck roast. And they were some of my family's new favorites. It's the first time I had ever, in bulk freezer cooking fashion, done marinated chuck roast. My family loved it. So we're gonna do 2 more today, or 1 recipe, but 2. 1 for me, 1 for my friend. And this is maple, and there's also chipotles in this, and it's gonna be fabulous. So the first ingredient is 1 cup, I just have 1 jar. This is 8.4 fluid ounces, so that's a cup, a little over a cup, pineapple juice. And then each one of these is gonna get, you know, I'm worried that this is gonna be too spicy because the next ingredient is chipotles and adobo. Let me see how many chipotles are in here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. I'm just gonna divide this can between here with the sauce and everything. This is about a 3 to 4 pound chuck roast. This is chuck roast that I got from my local farmer. And when I asked my butcher what I want for the cutting instructions, I like my chuck roast to be between 3 and 4 pounds. And there is usually a bone in my chuck roast, so that adds to the weight. I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of tomato paste in each one of these. A little bit of oil, not much, about a tablespoon. And I just re-looked at the recipe. That was supposed to be 3 tablespoons per each one of these. So I think I'm just gonna use this whole jar. Now we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. So these are to be turned into sliders. So I have some Hawaiian rolls in my freezer. So when I go to cook these, I'm gonna put this in the crock pot. I'm gonna pull out those Hawaiian rolls, and then I'll probably make up a coleslaw to go along with it. And that is going to be this maple, it's kind of like a maple chipotle slider, which is gonna be delicious. And I kept those jalapenos, the chipotles, whole so that they can be picked out in case they're too spicy. Chipotles sometimes are one of those things, just like a jalapeno, because a chipotle is a smoked jalapeno. You never know how hot they're gonna be. So if they're hot ones, you can just pull them out and they don't end up in the whole sauce. Okay, 2 more meals, 1 more recipe down. This next recipe is inspired by when I made those football appetizers. I made this mango sauce to dip fried coconut shrimp in, and I thought that would make a fantastic marinade on chicken. So that is what is inspiring this next recipe. I have 1 bunch of washed cilantro. I'm gonna add in there about 1.5 cups of mangoes, about 1/2 cup of soy sauce, 1 jalapeno diced, a tiny bit of sriracha, a knob of fresh ginger, garlic, and oil. I need a little bit more oil in here. Now we're gonna get the lid on this. Okay, I wanna give this a taste test. One of the things that was a little different in the dip that I made is that instead of using oil, I plan to put this on the grill, so I needed a little oil. I used mayonnaise and I think it was mayonnaise and sour cream as the creamy agent, but that makes for a better dip. That is good. It's got a little bit of heat to it, a little bit of sweetness from the mango, but not overpoweringly sweet. Fantastic. Fantastic. Just checking my recipe. Oil, cilantro, mango, soy sauce. Okay, that's everything. So I'm gonna put this on chicken thighs. But before I do that, our sauce is thickened up, and I think my meatballs are done. Yeah, they're done. I'm gonna drain some of this grease off of them because I don't want that in my final recipe. I have my meatballs. You know what I should do? I should taste this. Whoop! Don't want to spill that. I should taste this sweet and sour sauce. Oh, that is so yummy with the pineapple juice. My goodness. So I'm gonna put half of this sweet and sour sauce over half the meatballs and the other half over the other half. I definitely could have made a few more meatballs, but that's all I had thought, so that's all I made. But that'll be really delicious on rice and on vegetables. So I'm just gonna let that cook while we finish up our marinated recipes. All right, we've got another recipe down. I usually like to have 6 chicken thighs in each one of my bags so that we have dinner plus some for leftovers. Two more down. So we're back to our fajita chicken. So we've got our 2 bags here, and these are chicken breasts, and they're still a little frozen. So we're gonna get these sliced up thinly. This you can throw in the grill, you can cook in the oven. No, the grill would be hard unless you had a grill pan. This you can throw in the crock pot or on the stove. So I'm gonna get 3 chicken breasts in each bag. It's easier to cut when they're still partially frozen. I just thawed it enough to get it out of the bag. Now this comes together really, really quickly once you have your chicken and peppers cut up. I'm gonna add taco seasoning. Two big spoonfuls and a splash of oil. And 2 more, checked off the list. We're getting started on the last marinade we're making today, and that is honey harissa chicken. This is gonna be so delicious, served with some sweet potatoes, a jalapeno yogurt sauce. I already can taste it. I'm so excited for it. So I have a really large lemon, so I'm putting half the zest in each one of these bags. Just like that. Get all that beautiful zest out of there. Then I have a jar of harissa, and I'm gonna put half the jar in one bag and the other half in the other bag. I had already used some out of this jar, so I'm just using the rest of it. I have some thyme leaves And my honey is downstairs and it is completely crystallized. And so I think I'm just gonna substitute maple syrup. I think that'll be delicious. I need a 1/4 cup in each one. So I'm just gonna finish that bottle. Some oil. Lots of garlic and sweet paprika. And last but certainly not least, salt. And just like that, we have another recipe done. These have been in the freezer for quite some time. They're not fully frozen at all, but they're pretty close to it. And I'm gonna cover these. And I went ahead and I typed up the baking instructions for my friend that I'm bringing these to. Cooking is not her favorite thing to do at all. And so I was pretty detailed in the cooking instructions. What I like to do is take a piece of foil and fold it in half and go ahead and get that covered on top here. Get this wrapped around. I was specific with each individual one, and I also put recommendations for possible sides because the meatballs I thought would be good with some specific things, so I went ahead and just put that down. But of course my friend can have it however she would like. And you know what? I can't tell what each of these are once I cover them. So I better go ahead and just cut here. I have to think about this. Okay, this is the French onion shepherd's pie, so that's there. This one is the cranberry sweet and sour jalapeno meatballs. And this one goes here. And this one is the baked ziti. So here I've got saran wrap. So now that I have my 2 layers of foil, I'm gonna put my casserole on top of the saran wrap. I'm gonna put my cooking instructions on top of that. I'm gonna cover that like this. And I'm gonna cover this with 2 layers of plastic wrap. I don't know when she was gonna wanna cook these, so I just wanna make sure they're protected in the freezer for her. So there's one. I'm gonna do the same thing with the second one. You know, I put on here how to cook this and reheat this in the oven, but these meatballs probably could have been put in a freezer bag and probably could have been reheated. Not probably, they definitely could have been reheated in a crock pot as well. But I didn't really think about that until just now. Get this one on here. And then once I have these covered, I'm gonna pop these back in the fridge, and I'm not gonna stack them on top of each other until they're frozen solid, which they are not frozen solid quite yet. The reason I like to use my glass Tupperware for me, the ones with the snap lids, which I'll show you in just a minute, is because then I don't have to worry about going through so much plastic wrap and foil pans. But when I'm bringing them to somebody, well, this is very light. These are the meatballs. I can go ahead and stack that up there. I don't want them to have to think about returning my baking dish, so I don't mind using the plastic wrap and the foil. But just for my own use, I prefer not to go through this much. So let me show you my let me show you everything we did today because we got a lot done. Before I can show you all of what we made today, because I gotta go grab a bunch of it out of the fridge and freezer, I can't even remember how many recipes we made today, but it was a lot. For my friend, I'm going to put her waffles in a Ziploc bag so she can just enjoy them and pull them out of her freezer when she wants to freeze them, when she wants to eat them. For me, I'm gonna put them in this reusable silicone bag. I love using the reusable silicone bags for things like this because it doesn't make the bag messy, so then it's not annoying to have to clean the bag. They work really well. I haven't had any problems with freezer burn. We'll go through these well before that. I don't like to use these reusable silicone bags for anything that has any sort of strong odor, like garlic or onions or raw meat. And so this is the perfect thing. The silicone does hold on to the smell of garlic and things like that. So I just learned for these bags, this type of application is absolutely perfect. So here I've got my waffles. I'll probably keep one of these small-ish bags worth of waffles out so that I don't have to freeze them and then thaw them. We'll just eat those for the next couple days. I still have some pre-cooked bacon in my freezer. So on the day that we want to have waffles, if we want bacon, I can thaw some of that and warm that up. I have pre-cooked sausage in my freezer. Usually when we have something like waffles or French toast, we like to have a protein with it. And of course my chickens are now laying again, so I can absolutely, let's see how many I can fit in this bag, start relying on my homegrown chicken eggs. So we were able to get 24 muffins, and I didn't even count how many waffles. It was so many waffles. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 48 waffles, plus a bunch of them have already been eaten. Probably 6 or 7 of those waffles have already been enjoyed. Perfect. I did double this waffle recipe. So if you want to make that many waffles, I doubled the muffin recipe too. So if you want to get that many waffles, just go ahead and double the recipe that I linked down below. Okay, I'm gonna go grab all the other stuff so I can show you all we got done today. Here it is in all its glory. So we got 2 fajita chickens, 1 for me, 1 for my friend, 2 of the maple harissa chicken. This is the maple pork sliders, the mango jalapeno marinade. I've got 2 of the baked ziti's, 1 for me, 1 for my friend. I am gonna put this in the freezer. So this is the container that has the lid. I just like this because it's easy, less to have to even manage than this, but I'm excited to have both of these done. I have dinner in the oven, which is, oh my goodness, look at that. That is the shepherd's pie. I have 1 more shepherd's pie for my friend. We've got our jalapeno cranberry meatballs with sweet and sour sauce. This one I'm not gonna freeze. I'm just gonna pop this in the fridge. I'll bake this up sometime this week, and we will have that with probably broccoli and rice. And then we have all of our breakfast. What a fantastic, fantastic day. I have the dishwasher running, and we got a lot done today. We got a lot done for meal prep for Josh and I, plus I'm able to, not tomorrow, but the next day, I am gonna go drop all these meals off for my friend so she doesn't have to worry about cooking for a couple nights whenever she needs that little bit of grace for her. So I will again type up for the maple chuck roast so that she knows kind of the intent of that is to have that with sliders and maybe coleslaw, and then how to cook up the fajita chicken and the other 2, the mango jalapeno or mango cilantro and the harissa maple. I'm tired. I feel like I'm rambling now. It was a long day. It was a fantastic day. One of my favorite days is to get in the kitchen and do a bunch of meal prep so that my future self doesn't have to think about meals quite so much. And so thank you so much, friend, for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. These recipes will be linked down below. Some of them I did tweak a little bit, but that's how I cook. I have a hard time getting in the kitchen and not doing any sort of tweaking, even to my own recipes. I hardly make anything 2 times in a row. I am gonna go put these back in the fridge and freezer and everywhere they go so that they will be ready for us next time we need a meal. So friend, thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time.